Fresh youth here as we're 10 days away from the NFL draft at Lambeau Field on ESPN, with Cam Ward widely expected to be the #1 pick to the Titans. Then the draft starts really at #2, where our Mel Kiper Jr. projects Travis Hunter to go to the Browns. Mel doesn't have another QB coming off the board until pick #9, with the Saints taking Shedeur Sanders. Speaking of, NFL insider Dan Graziano joining us for more. And Grozfather, there are still some uncertain notes here ahead of this draft. Let's run through some of that in your Graziano notes beginning in New Orleans. What can you tell us?
There's a report, Randy, at the end of last week about Derek Carr and a shoulder injury that could threaten his availability for the 2025 season. So there's a lot of mystery around Derek Carr's situation that has led some people to wonder if it's more likely that Shedeur Sanders or some quarterback could be the Saints' pick at #9. Fact of the matter is, if the Saints like Shedeur Sanders enough to take him at 9, they might have been thinking that way anyway, with Carr only under contract for 1 more year. But it does lend an air of intrigue to this 10 days ahead of time. If Shedeur Sanders does not go at 9, if he's still available at 10 or in the teens, watch out for the Pittsburgh Steelers at 21 for potential to move up. They had him in for a visit late last week. They are still waiting on an answer from Aaron Rodgers, to whom they've had an offer out for some time, but they know that Aaron Rodgers is not going to be the long-term answer at quarterback, even if he does sign there. So the Steelers could be in the mix for a quarterback at 21. Remember, they don't have a second-round pick. They traded it for DK Metcalf. And then the Giants go back to pick #3. You saw they were projected there for Abdul Carter. If the Browns were to take Abdul Carter, the Giants might take Travis Hunter, a long-term answer at quarterback as well. But they have the second pick in the second round. And if they decide to pass on a quarterback up top at the top of the first round, they could be in the mix for someone like Louisville's Tyler Shuck, who you saw there, Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart, that next group of quarterbacks, assuming Cam Ward has gone 1 and Shedeur Sanders is gone by the time the Giants pick again.
Tyler Shuck has been trending upward in a nice way for the kid out of Louisville.
Reporting that he has a shoulder injury situation that could threaten his availability for the 2025 season.
Okay.
There's been nothing further from anyone. Like it's been very difficult to get information on this. So what we know is there's a weird situation between Derek Carr and the Saints. So they went to him about a pay cut early in the offseason. He refused, and instead of releasing him, which may have been his preference, right? Because then you can go sign with whoever you want. They restructured his contract, so he's pretty much stuck there. Like, they can't really even trade him because it would cost them too much against the cap to do so. So now there's an injury situation. So a number of different things have piled up this offseason between Derek Carr and the Saints, to the point where there's a question about what, if anything, they're going to get from him this year. So now heading into the draft, they're picking 9th. Everybody wants to see, well, what does that mean for the draft? Fact of the matter is the Saints should have been at least thinking about quarterback early in this year's draft regardless, because Carr's only going to be there 1 more year max. So at this point, we don't know. Their offseason workout program, I think, starts today. So obviously I don't expect that he'll be a part of it, but they're going to get a lot of questions about it. Maybe we'll have some more clarity in the next couple days.
I mean, the Saints are -145 when it comes to betting odds to take a quarterback, so heavy favorites there.
Yeah.
Curious to know what that does for the other teams that are going to be looking for quarterbacks in this year's class. We talked about the New York Giants, the Cleveland Browns, maybe not taking a quarterback at 2 and 3 respectively, but trying to trade back up into the first round to get a guy. The Pittsburgh Steelers are sitting there at 21 overall. What does it mean for them now with this Derek Carr news about trying to get the second or third quarterback off the board?
Yeah, again, I don't know. Like, if the Saints like Shedeur Sanders as their franchise quarterback of the future, then they should have been taking him anyway, like regardless of any Derek Carr injury news. So that's the question. Do they now force a pick at #9 overall because Carr is a question mark? I would say probably not. They should probably be approaching it the same way they would have anyway. And then the mission is to get Carr to come play for them, and then, maybe use the 9 pick to make yourself a better team, give him a better chance to succeed this year. So then you have the Steelers at 21. Like, who else in that range is going to be looking quarterback? Is Seattle at 18 going to be thinking about somebody for the long term because Sam Darnold's maybe on like a year to year? If you're the Giants or the Browns and you didn't take a quarterback at 3 or 2, do you now need to trade up ahead of Pittsburgh to get your quarterback because they don't have a second-round pick, and they may be the team that has to force one at 21. So if the second quarterback goes at 9, that changes the calculus, I think, a little bit. If you perceive a difference between 2 and 3, right? If you have Shedeur Sanders lumped with Jackson Dart and Tyler Shuck and all these other guys, then you don't really care who goes at 9 because you have the same pool. But if you have him separate from that group and he starts falling into the teens and 20s, that may be where you see somebody try and trade up.
Dan, Evan brought this up earlier in the show. Could we see maybe Aaron Rodgers now being connected to New Orleans in any way, shape, or form because he still hasn't signed? He's still out there.
Yeah, possible. But I think the one thing that gives me pause there is, you hate to say this about a team in April when everyone's got hope, but I don't think the Saints look like the team, if you're Aaron Rodgers, is like, that's my shot to win a title before I'm done, right at age 41. Like, he needs to go somewhere where they has a real sort of obvious chance of winning. I think that's why Pittsburgh appeals, because they're always kind of in the mix, whereas the Saints won 5 games last year and maybe in a situation where they're actually worse.
We're talking with Dan Graziano, ESPN NFL reporter here on Sportsmanlike, presented by Progressive Insurance. I know that you are on purpose presenting all the different options and angles with Derek Carr. I am, as you would expect, confused by it. Not by you, but by the Saints.
I am too.
Right. So I want to ask more about this because I guess, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but why did they want him?
Well, you got to have someone.
Do you?
Right? Yeah, well, because otherwise the center snaps the ball and it just keeps rolling.
Is that a bad thing? Considering Arch Manning could be the result of the ball keep rolling?
They have Spencer Rattler. They could go with him and see what happens, and then, you could be in a position. It's funny. The only quarterback the Saints have ever drafted in the first round is Arch Manning's grandfather in 1971. Wow. So, maybe. Who knows? I think that's an interesting point, right? Like, are the Saints going to expect to be a good team? Like, that's what I'm talking about with Aaron Rodgers and why it might not be an appealing destination for him. But, Derek Carr, you go back to like the second week of March ahead of free agency, there was a lot of questions about was he going to get released because the contract, and then they kind of surprised everybody by backing down and restructuring him when he was refusing the pay cut. So
and he doesn't have to agree to that, right? That can be done without his agreement?
Correct. Okay. In a lot of these contracts, yes, they have automatic conversion rights, and my understanding is that the Saints acted on that, yes.
So, Garage Friday.
Yeah, I wish I knew more.
What you're saying presents the muddy picture that we need to.
A muddy picture is exactly the right way to frame it.
Okay.
Yeah, Garage Friday, the Cleveland Browns signed Joe Flacco.
Yeah.
Remember earlier this offseason, they traded for Kenny Pickett. My immediate reaction was this probably takes them out of the business of trading for Kirk Cousins. And I'm curious if you agree with that. And if so, what becomes the place that we now circle and pencil as a potential landing spot for Kirk Cousins?
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with it. I think. Okay. I think if you can get Cousins and you're the Browns, that gives you a better chance to compete this year than probably Flacco does. Now, you don't know if you're going to be able to get Cousins, and Flacco may have had other options, so maybe you go ahead and get him because you know he's a guy you